Imagine following a strangely sweet smell through the woods, only to discover that it is coming from a dead body. Imagine waking up alone inside your car to the sound of something scratching against it, and later seeing a man sprint out of the darkness, demanding that you open your door. Or imagine being threatened by a stranger, then finding him standing on your front steps, even though you never showed him where you lived. These 3 stories were posted to Reddit by people who claimed they really happened. Their accounts have since been deleted. A warning before we begin. The first story discusses death and suicide. The first poster was walking through the woods a few years ago. They had wandered away from the usual trail when they noticed an overpowering sweet smell. It was strong enough to make them curious. They pulled back some of the undergrowth to find its source and discovered the body of a man. He had clearly been there for several days. His body was swollen and badly discolored, and the local wildlife had already begun feeding on him. The poster immediately called the police, but because they were in such a remote area, officers told them to remain beside the body until help arrived. And help did not arrive quickly. The daylight gradually disappeared, the forest became completely dark, and the poster was left sitting there, alone, beside the dead stranger. Eventually, the police arrived and removed the body. The poster later learned that the man had died by suicide. You might think that would be the end of the story. It wasn't. Not long afterward, the man began appearing in the poster's dreams. In those dreams, he could speak, and what he said was far more disturbing than the original discovery. He told the poster that he was angry that they had uncovered his body, angry that they had disturbed his final resting place. Then he began urging the poster to end their own life. The poster understood that these nightmares were probably their mind trying to process something traumatic, but knowing that did not make them any less terrifying. Even years later, the dead man occasionally returns to their dreams. In fact, the poster ended their original Reddit story by saying that after writing about him again, he would probably visit them that very night. The second story happened after a late-night family reunion. The poster had a 2-hour drive home and needed to work the following morning, so staying overnight wasn't an option. Most of the journey followed dark roads surrounded by dense trees and bushes, the kind of isolated road that already feels like the setting of a horror movie. About 45 minutes into the drive, the poster was suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. Not ordinary tiredness. This was the kind that arrives without warning, when keeping your eyes open becomes a genuine struggle. They searched for somewhere safe to stop, but there were no parking areas nearby. Eventually, they made a questionable decision. They pulled onto the grass beside the road and positioned the car behind some bushes. Other vehicles were still passing every few minutes, and the poster hoped the bushes would keep the parked car hidden. Before closing their eyes, they checked the time. It was exactly 11:22 p.m. At 11:50, a scratching noise woke them. Something appeared to be scraping against the outside of the car. The sound stopped after several seconds. Still exhausted, the poster convinced themselves it was probably an animal and went back to sleep without looking outside. When the scratching woke them again, the clock showed 12:40 a.m. But this time, it didn't stop. The poster began wondering why an animal would leave and then return almost an hour later. They cautiously checked the rearview mirror and barely caught sight of something running away from the car and disappearing into the forest. At that moment, The poster remembered the old urban legend about a killer scratching a couple's car to lure someone outside. There was no chance they were going to investigate. They started the engine and immediately drove away. Less than 100 yards ahead, the road curved. As the poster came around the bend, they saw another car parked beside the road. Its driver's door was wide open. They slowed down just enough to check inside. The car appeared to be empty. Then the poster looked into the rearview mirror. At first, there was nothing behind them. And then, a man came sprinting around the bend. He ran directly toward their car, screaming,
Hey you! Get the fuck out of your car! Now!
The poster accelerated and got out of there as quickly as possible. They never discovered who the man was, why his car had been left with its door open, or what he intended to do if they obeyed him. They never saw him again. The lesson the poster took from that night was brutally simple. Never sleep alone on the side of a deserted road. The final story began with a midnight bike ride. One summer night, the poster and a friend had been cycling together. When they separated for the evening, the poster only had about 2 blocks left to travel alone. Construction forced them onto the sidewalk. The streets were empty and everything seemed fine until they approached the turn leading to their home. A man was walking ahead of them. He appeared to be in his 40s and looked slightly scruffy, but otherwise completely ordinary. The sidewalk was narrow. The poster didn't want to surprise him by suddenly riding past, so when they were about 6 feet behind him, they called out, "Hey, behind you." The man turned and gave them an intensely angry look. Uncomfortable, the poster continued riding and turned onto their street. The man followed. He began screaming insults and threatening to kill them. The poster lived close to the corner, but going directly home would reveal exactly where they lived. Instead, they continued riding and made another complete loop around the block. And that is when the situation became truly frightening. When the poster returned and looked down their street, the man was standing on their front steps. He wasn't wandering nearby. He wasn't simply walking past. He was standing directly outside their home, staring into the street as if he already knew exactly where they lived. The man noticed the poster riding past for a second time, but now he didn't shout. He didn't chase them. He simply watched. The poster returned to their friend's house rather than risk going home. 2 days later, their bicycle was stolen from an alley near the house. There was no proof that the stranger stole it, but the timing made an already disturbing encounter feel even worse. The poster later explained that part of what frightened them was how normal the man had initially appeared. Nothing about him warned them that a polite attempt to pass on the sidewalk would provoke death threats. Their family waited to contact law enforcement until after the bicycle was stolen, and the poster never learned how the stranger found the correct house. 3 ordinary situations: a walk through the woods, a long drive home, and a short midnight bike ride. Each became terrifying within seconds. These accounts were presented as real experiences, although, like most anonymous internet stories, they cannot be independently verified. Which one would keep you awake tonight?